our t-shirt front. And the pattern that I have drawn out is 9 inches across on the width and 7.5 inches on the depth. And the 7.5 inch side is actually going to be the side that will be pleated up where the elastic goes for your ears. So when I'm happy with this, I will use my pattern weight to hold this down. Most people don't have that, so a soup can or anything of substantial weight just to hold it in place would do. Then I use a rotary cutter. Some people will actually physically draw it out and then cut it with scissors. But I pretty much use the rotary cutter for everything. Okay, then remove that and put that aside, and you can pitch the rest of the t-shirt. At that point, there really is nothing else for this to be used for. So then we have that. Then we also want to then proceed, which I've already cut, a backing, 100% cotton backing. If you don't have any quilting cotton or anything like that in your home, you can cut up a bed sheet. Use a good quality bed sheet, because they really stress it really needs to be 100% cotton. And also pre-shrink things before you cut. So we have that, and then we also need to cut. I'm using 3/8 inch elastic now. 1/4 inch is ideal, but 3/8 will work fine. And I've also read that some people have taken 1/2 inch elastic and just cut it right down the middle. But you need to be very careful with that you're not actually splitting the rubber, that it just goes fraying all over the place. So 3/8 is a good happy medium. So these are the main things you need. You need your t-shirt front, you need your backing, and you need your elastic. Start up your machine. Some people want to know if you need to use a special needle, if they need just for knits. I say it's totally dependent on what your machine likes. This being an industrial machine pretty much will sew through anything, but she does get cranky. So first step is to put your elastic onto your base piece, because this is the more stable of the two fabrics. So about 1/2 inch from that upper edge, again we're working on the short side, because that's the side that's going to be pleated over into your ears. Make sure your elastic doesn't twist on you, and by that I mean so you don't put it on like this. So when you go to put it on, it's like all twisted up over your ear. So just make sure it's kind of it's straight on you. Make sure your elastic is not curled up on you. Okay, now we have our elastic on here. Now we want to take our fashion fabric, our t-shirt front, and just start pinning it. Right side of the t-shirt to the side that you have stitched the elastic to. That way that makes those elastic bands encased in the seam allowance. And you want to pin it pretty good, because this knit does walk all over the place. Some people might have a walking foot for their machine. You might want to use that. Just depends on your sewing machine, what it likes and what it doesn't like. They do have personalities. One thing about wearing a mask at this time, making these, it keeps you from putting pins in your mouth, because I'm a terrible I'm a terrible put the pins in my mouth person. You can see this knit is wanting to curl up on us too, so you kind of have to fight that. Okay, well, just about there. Okay, now we're ready to stitch. I'm going to try and remember to leave an opening here at the bottom. And use your fingers to hold this knit out. And then make sure that elastic doesn't want to flip itself back this way into your seam. Because if it does, then you'll have to rip it out. Seam allowance is probably right around 3/8 of an inch. You know, if you take it to a 1/2 inch, that's no big deal. 1/4 of an inch, it's no big deal. Push its way this way. I'm approaching close to where I started from, so remember to leave that opening and back stitch along that so it doesn't rip out on you while you're trying to turn it. Okay, now we have this. It's stitched up on its 4 sides with an opening. Now we can remove our pins. Now, depending how thick your fabric is, sometimes you can go through and just trim off these corners. Be careful not to really cut the elastic though. That just keeps some of the bulk from in there when you're turning it. Okay, now we're turning it. I'm going to pull those out. Then you can find a tool to help push out those corners. I actually have, this is actually a collar turner. Now I also used to save chopsticks, because the little chopstick point used to work really well too to just push out these corners. Part's ready. Now we are ready to go to the ironing board. Again, we want to press mainly from the wrong side, the back side, just because that's stable and it does not have the logo, the rubbery logo on it that will fight your iron. Make sure your little ends are where we left this open for turning. Make sure that just gets turned up in there so we can catch that when we're stitching. Steamed up my glasses. Okay, now we're ready to go back to the table or where we want to do it and start the pleating. So we now have a finished, looks like this. These seam allowances don't slide out when you're going to top stitch. So start pleating from the top, because they like to have, general rule of thumb is the pleat should be going downwards and not upwards like a cummerbund. And part of the theory behind that is that they feel like if they're up, you could collect moisture in them. It's, droplets if somebody sneezed at you. Now, I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but that's what some experts said. It's basically 3 pleats. They're like 1-inch pleats. If you want to measure, that's totally acceptable. I work from side to side to try and make my 2 pleats fairly consistent. Okay, now these are ready to be stitched. All 4 edges to start with. Need to use your scissor tips or something to hold that fabric down so it doesn't walk all over the place while you're trying to stitch it. That's our first time around. Let's make sure that our stitching is caught in, hold this seam allowances in. You can remove your pins at this point. And now we want to do another set of stitching right along this pleated edge just to make sure those pleats stay in. Because it's kind of like stitching on a pair of denim blue jeans. Your machine wants to jump over a lot of the bulk if it will in fact stitch it. Some machines won't. And that's kind of why you want to use your scissor tips or something to help hold that seam allowance down, just so you don't sew over your fingers while you're forcing it under the needle. finished mask. Trim your threads. Okay. Now if we want, we can go back to the ironing board and give it a final press, which means it just looks a little pretty. We can go do that. And then I press in the back side also. There we have it. You see we have our nice heart right there in the middle.